The world was originally ruled by Odin, a supreme god of northern Europe, but with the development of mankind, new gods appeared to win the beliefs of humans. The new gods sought out the goddess of dawn, Ostara. They wanted to entice her to join their side. Obviously, Ostara did not want to participate. Ostara preferred to side with Odin. However, the new gods surrounded Ostara. At that moment, Odin, the king of the gods, appeared. Odin saw that the new gods clearly did not welcome them. At this time, the leader of the new gods, Mr. World, spoke up and declared that Odin had become the past. Now was the age of the new gods. If Odin did not know his place, he would be punished by the new gods. Odin saw the arrogance of the new gods and immediately became angry. Immediately, dark clouds covered the sky and covered the earth. Suddenly, a lightning bolt struck the new gods. The gods who weren't there were all dead. This also meant that the war between the old gods and the new gods had officially begun, but Odin wasn't afraid. That day, Odin and Shadow were discussing in the tavern how to deal with the new god when Sweeney suddenly appeared before them. He was an elf from Ireland. He was also one of Odin's subordinates. Legend has it that Sweeney owned a lucky coin. Whoever had it could do anything they wanted. He could even bring the dead back to life. Obviously, Shadow wanted that coin very much because his wife had just passed away not long ago. But Sweeney kept teasing Shadow with fake coins. Sweeney didn't easily give the coin to anyone. When Sweeney saw that Shadow wasn't paying attention to him anymore, he took out the newspaper about Shadow's wife's car accident to provoke him. As a result, Shadow punched Sweeney in the face. Sweeney immediately fell backwards. Shadow picked up the coin on the table and left. Then he went to visit his wife's grave. Looking at his wife's grave, he recalled every memory of her. Before leaving, he threw the coin on his wife's grave. At that time, he still didn't know that it was a lucky coin. After Shadow left, the coin automatically sank into the grave. On the way back, Shadow discovered a mysterious object in the distance that was glowing. He went forward to see. The mysterious object automatically opened and turned into a mechanical mask. Suddenly, the mask flew straight into Shadow's face. When Shadow woke up, he found himself in a virtual space. Next to him were two faceless gods. Opposite him was the god of technology. This time he brought Shadow here to question Odin about his plan. But Shadow was clearly stubborn. The god of technology couldn't get any answers he wanted, so he angrily ordered the faceless men to deal with Shadow. After hearing the order, the faceless men immediately appeared, pressed Shadow to the ground and beat him. At that moment, the virtual space suddenly opened and sucked Shadow out. Then the faceless men hung Shadow in the air. They were about to strangle him to death. Just when Shadow was in a very dangerous situation, a mysterious force broke the rope. When Shadow woke up, all that was left before his eyes was a tragic scene. Shadow went to Odin to express his dissatisfaction because after all, he had just been almost killed by the new god. Obviously, Odin did not expect that the new god would attack so secretly. He immediately decided to summon the ancient gods to declare war. The next day, the two drove to Chicago to seek help from the ancient gods, but they had not seen each other for many years, so they could not go without gifts. So Odin told Shadow to go to the supermarket to buy some gifts. While Shadow was shopping, the woman on TV suddenly called him back. It turned out that she was the goddess of media from the new god group. But Shadow did not think much and unplugged the TV. Unexpectedly, the TV turned on automatically. The media goddess on the TV apologized for last night's actions. She also wanted to entice Shadow to join the new god's side. If Shadow agreed, he would receive an attractive reward. But Shadow obviously wouldn't agree because last night he was almost beaten to death by the new god. The next day, Odin brought gifts to find the goddess of dawn. The goddess of dawn also enthusiastically invited Odin and Shadow to stay for dinner. At that moment, Chernobog, the god of darkness, returned. He was also once an excellent general of Odin. Due to some incidents, he had a conflict with Odin. Chernobog saw the two people coming and his face was very unpleasant. When Odin saw Chernobog, he immediately went up to greet him. But unexpectedly, Odin was chased away by Chernobog. The goddess of dawn invited Odin to stay for dinner, so Chernobog had to accept Odin's gift. During dinner, Odin told the purpose of this trip, but Chernobog soon saw, through Odin's purpose, Chernobog also refused without hesitation, because he was too tired of the wars. Now he enjoyed a peaceful life. Odin suggested that Shadow and Chernobog play a game of chess, and they would take Shadow's life instead of the bet. If Shadow won, Chernobog would have to help Odin fight against the new god. If Shadow lost, he would have to use his blood to water Chernobog's dark hammer. Shadow looked at the dark hammer and his heart was in panic. He could not concentrate while playing chess. Odin's excellent general was indeed very confident in playing chess. In the end, Shadow lost. Chernobog said that when the sun rose, he would use the dark hammer to smash Shadow's head. In another development, the innkeeper saw this drunkard and immediately raised her gun to warn him to leave. Sweeney didn't believe she would shoot, but the next second, she shot the wine bottle in his hand without hesitation. Even Sweeney, who was half a god, could only retreat when faced with such a fierce woman. Sweeney was kicked out. Luckily, he met a kind driver. The driver saw Sweeney wandering around, so he decided to give Sweeney a ride. Sweeney was afraid that the driver had bad intentions towards him, so he firmly refused. But in the end, he could not resist the driver's enthusiasm. Sweeney had to get in his car. Suddenly, an accident happened. The truck in front suddenly blew a tire, and the steel pipes on the truck immediately fell down and hit the driver. The police came to the scene to investigate for half a day, and they determined that this was an accident. But Sweeney felt that something was wrong, because he had been having bad luck lately. He searched his pocket and realized that his lucky coin had disappeared. Sweeney immediately thought of Shadow. At that time, Shadow was with a beautiful girl on the rooftop. Shadow forgot that he had bet his life to Chernobog. Zoria had found out about it. Zoria glanced and realized that Shadow was the one who was about to die. Obviously, Shadow was a little surprised. This girl was not only beautiful but also had special abilities. Zoria said that she could save Shadow, but the price was a kiss from Shadow, because from childhood to adulthood, no man had kissed her. Before Shadow could react, Zoria stepped forward and kissed him. Then Zoria picked the moon from the starry sky and turned it into a coin. Zoria gave this coin to Shadow and told him not to lose it, because this was the thing that could save his life. As soon as Zoria finished speaking, Shadow woke up. Shadow thought he was dreaming, but he really had the coin in his hand. In order to survive, Shadow went to Chernobog again and invited him to play another game of chess. But Shadow had lost the bet with Chernobog last time, so he could not agree to play again. Shadow used provocative words to provoke Chernobog again. Chernobog could not bear this humiliation, so he immediately accepted Shadow's challenge. With the help of the coin, Shadow indeed won the game. Chernobog also kept his promise to go to Wisconsin with Odin to fight against the new god. To celebrate Shadow's victory, Odin also invited him to a full meal, but at that moment, Sweeney came to ask for the coin back from Shadow. But Shadow had already thrown the coin on his wife's grave. In the end, Shadow could not stand Sweeney's questioning. Shadow had to tell Sweeney the location of his wife's grave. Not knowing how long it took, Sweeney finally reached his destination. Sweeney immediately picked up a hoe to dig the ground. After tireless efforts, Sweeney finally dug up Shadow's wife's coffin. But when Sweeney opened the coffin, the body inside had disappeared. The first thing Laura did after being resurrected was to look for her husband. She was walking in the middle of the road when she saw her husband being suspended in the air by faceless gods. Laura was immediately angry. It turned out that the person who saved Shadow earlier was his wife. It was just that he had lost consciousness, so he could not see her face clearly at that time. But Laura had just risen from the grave, so she felt disgusted with herself. In the end, she decided to avoid meeting Shadow. She chose to go to her best friend's house. When her best friend saw Laura, she thought Laura had turned into a zombie. Her family immediately turned around and ran into the bathroom. Laura couldn't explain why she was alive, but her best friend saw that Laura had no bad intentions, so she finally calmed down. She even reattached Laura's injured arm. After saying goodbye to her best friend, Laura borrowed her car to go find her husband. At this time, Shadow and Odin were detained by the local police for defrauding the bank. At that moment, a strange woman slowly flew over. She was the goddess of communication in the New Gods. The leader of the New Gods, Mistworld, also appeared before the two. Mistworld also brought the god of technology. Mistworld apologized for his subordinates hanging. Shadow, Mr. World hoped to resolve the hatred with Odin. It was obvious that the new god wanted to merge with the old god, but Odin felt that the new god and the old god were not on the same level, so Odin flatly refused. Mistworld, seeing that the negotiation had failed, Mistworld had no choice but to prepare to leave, but the god of technology felt that they could take this opportunity to kill Odin. After all, Odin was alone now. As for Shadow, the god of technology looked down on him. He didn't even bother to touch Shadow, but then the god of technology was scolded by Mr. World. He didn't understand how terrifying Odin was at all. The goddess of media blew a kiss to the god of technology, and immediately his two front teeth were knocked out. Before leaving, Mr. World said something incomprehensible. He said that he would wait for Odin in room 204. Finally, Odin and Shadow walked out of the interrogation room, but when they went out, they found that the police station had been completely destroyed. All the officers present were tragically killed. Just as they were about to leave, Shadow was suddenly stabbed by a tree goblin. He endured the intense pain and hurriedly fled the place, but they didn't notice that there was a strange eye on the wall watching everything. It didn't seem to be a new god, but rather an ancient creature. In another development, this man was walking on the scaffolding when the railing in his hand suddenly broke off. The man fell straight into the high-temperature iron furnace below. The workers here were used to all of this. The company held a funeral for the man, but in fact, they were celebrating the sacrifice. Leading them was the fire god Vulcan. The whole town believed in him. He was also the target that Odin was trying to attract. At Vulcan's command, everyone fired their guns into the sky. Just like that, a simple and cruel funeral ended perfectly. This scene was seen by Odin and Shadow, who came to see it. Odin told Shadow to stay in the car and not go out, but Shadow was clearly confused and didn't understand what Odin meant. However, Shadow still listened and sat in the car. At that moment, bullets flew one after another, damaging the luxurious car. Only Vulcan and Odin weren't hit. After all, they were gods, so even bullets had to dodge them. Vulcan enthusiastically invited Odin and Shadow to his house to play. Odin also directly stated his purpose. Odin needed Vulcan to forge him a sword of God. Vulcan happily agreed with Odin, but their conversation was always mixed with the smell of gunpowder. Shadow stood next to him, and he could clearly see the reason. Odin said that he trusted Vulcan very much. Vulcan was indeed not careless in his work. After thousands of hammer strikes, Vulcan finally succeeded in making a sword of God. Odin said that after so many years, Vulcan's skills were still the same. Vulcan said that he preferred to make weapons. Because the times had changed, people no longer craved this kind of technology. Odin heard the hidden meaning in Vulcan's words. Finally, Odin asked Vulcan if he had joined the army of the new god. Vulcan was silent for a long time. Finally, he admitted that he had joined the army of the new god, but he said that he would remain neutral. He would not participate in their war. But in Odin's dictionary, this was absolutely not allowed. Odin took the newly forged sword and slashed it straight at Vulcan's neck. Then Odin kicked Vulcan, sending him flying into the iron furnace. Vulcan was immediately burned by the flames. Shadow had never seen such a scene before, so he was immediately terrified by the scene before his eyes. Odin felt that this still did not satisfy his anger, so he urinated in the iron furnace to curse Vulcan. At this time, Shadow truly realized Odin's cruelty. At this time, Sweeney kicked open the door and asked Laura if his lucky coin was on her. Laura did not answer Sweeney, but Sweeney stepped forward and strangled Laura. He looked straight into her esophagus. Finally, he saw his lucky coin. But the next second, Laura used only one finger, and she sent Sweeney flying away. Laura declared to Sweeney that this was her gold coin. Sweeney still did not give up. Sweeney pointed at Laura's nose and asked her to return the coin to him. Laura then broke Sweeney's finger. It was clear that even Sweeney, who was half a god, was no match for Laura. Laura even enjoyed mocking Sweeney. When Sweeney saw that being tough was not enough, he compromised. He conjured a pile of coins and wanted to use them to exchange. As long as the lucky coin was taken out of Laura's body, she would die immediately. Laura was not so easily fooled. Sweeney had no other choice, so he had to find a way to bring Laura back to life. If Laura was alive again, she would no longer need the lucky coin, so Sweeney could also get the coin. In order to attract the ancient gods, Odin also went to the place where the goddess of dawn lived. When he arrived, he discovered that today was the goddess of dawn's feast day. Odin told Astara that the god of fire was dead, and the culprit was the new god. Shadow stood beside him and heard this, and he understood another aspect of Odin's personality. Odin also hoped that Astara would use the power of spring to fight against the new god. At that moment, Laura and Sweeney also arrived. It turned out that the person who could revive Laura was Astara, but Astara glanced at him and realized that Laura's death was not normal. Laura's death was caused by a god. If that was the case, Astara could do nothing. Laura immediately questioned Sweeney about who had killed her. Under strict questioning, he told the truth. It turned out that it was all Odin's doing. Only then did Laura wake up. Just then the new gods arrived. They too came to win Astara over to their side, but Odin could not let them succeed. Just as they were about to fight, Mr. World appeared and told Odin not to resist in vain. The air era of the ancient gods was over, it was time to change the world order. Hearing this, Odin's face revealed anger. Suddenly, dark clouds covered the sky, a lightning bolt struck down, killing several of his subordinates. Then Odin told Shadow his true identity. It turned out that Odin was the god of war. Odin told the goddess of dawn to use magic to restore the spring of the world. The surrounding trees immediately withered. Shadow, who was human, was shocked by the scene before his eyes. At that moment, a familiar voice rang out. Shadow turned his head and saw his wife. Then the new god gave the god of technology a paperclip and told the god of technology to show it to the guards at the secret base. The god of technology took out the paperclip and held it in front of the identification machine. The large door on the wall slowly opened. A general in military uniform walked out. "This is the top secret intelligence base of the United States. Mr. World is the one behind the supreme power here." Mr. World told the general to open Argus's eyes to find out where Odin is. Obviously, this time, Mr. World was really angry. Odin and the others also went to Wisconsin. The person who welcomed them was a little elf, but the little elf told Odin that there was an uninvited guest. This guest was the Queen of Sheba, but Odin did not welcome her because she had joined the new god's side. Although she had nothing to do with the new god now, Odin was still wary of her. He did not want her to participate in the meeting of the ancient gods. The Queen of Sheba said that before everyone sacrificed horses to Odin, she was the oldest god in the desert. Obviously, in terms of time, Odin was only her younger sister. Therefore, Odin had no right to refuse the Queen of Sheba's participation. Odin did not dare to argue in front of the other gods, so he had to give the coin to Queen Sheba to participate in the conference. The ancient gods all arrived on time. When he arrived at the entrance to the divine world, Shadow was extremely surprised. He had never seen such a scene before. Immediately after, the gods were all sitting on the carousel. Odin invited Shadow to sit on it to go to the divine world. Only then did Shadow react and immediately sit on the carousel. Following Odin's spell, the carousel immediately spun at an extremely fast speed. A ray of light appeared on Odin's forehead. Immediately after, the gods were sitting on the mascot to fly to the divine world. When Shadow woke up, he found himself in a new world. Queen Sheba told Shadow that this was Odin's memory. Queen Sheba then led Shadow to the angel temple. When Shadow entered the temple, he was once again surprised by the scene before his eyes. The gods participating in the conference revealed their true forms one by one. This character was the spider god Anansi. He had suffered a lot because of the white people's racism. Since the Portuguese invaded the Gold Coast, their war had never stopped. Now he faced the new racist god. He had resolutely chosen to declare war on the new god. At this time, the dark god Chernobog also expressed his agreement with declaring war on the new gods. His dark hammer had not tasted blood for a long time. But the goddess Kali did not agree with declaring war on the new god. She said that she had lived peacefully in this world for many centuries. She had witnessed the rise of the new gods, and she had also witnessed their fall. She believed that the decline of the new god was only a matter of time. But Odin did not agree. He did not have the patience to wait. At this time, the Queen of Sheba stood up and expressed her agreement with Odin's point of view. Because she had joined the new gods, she knew their tricks well. Mr. World was much stronger than they imagined. If the ancient gods did not act, what awaited them was destruction. Just as the gods were discussing, Shadow interrupted them. He said that the man before them could lead them to gain the faith they deserved. Because when Shadow had nothing, it was Odin who saved his life. It was Odin who helped the gods gain faith. After Shadow's emotional speech, the gods were clearly shaken. So, the gods decided to follow Odin to fight against the new god. Thanks to that, the fire on Odin's body grew stronger. Seeing that the conference was a success, Odin brought the gods back to the real world. He planned to hold a celebration party before the battle. While the gods were reminiscing, Laura told Shadow not to trust Odin. It seemed like she had realized something. At that moment, Odin called Shadow back. It seemed that Odin intentionally interrupted them, but they did not know that at this time, Queen Sheba had secretly turned on the phone's location. It turned out that she was a spy of the new god. Suddenly, an infrared beam was shown into space. A remote assassin pulled the trigger. A bullet bearing the mark of the god of death shot down a person present. Even the god of war, Odin, was hit. Seeing the gods fall one by one, Odin was stunned speechless. At this moment, Shadow discovered the assassin's location, so he immediately stepped forward to stop him. After a few punches and kicks, he defeated the assassin. Just when Shadow thought everything was over, the assassin took out a switch and pressed it. A beam of light appeared above Shadow's head. It sucked Shadow up. At this moment, the the house was in chaos. Odin was surprised to find that his former lover, the sun goddess, was also shot. Odin looked at the sun goddess with heartache. The goddess of the setting sun no longer had any human beliefs, so in the end she couldn't resist the bullet that bore the mark of death. Chernobog cursed the new god, in the name of God. Laura ran outside and saw that Shadow had been taken away. Shadow's past was also revealed. At that time, he was a handsome young man, which led to the jealousy of the thugs in town. The leader told him that since he was so handsome, he should stay home. Before Shadow could react, the leader punched him. Then, the whole gang rushed in to beat and kick Shadow. Shadow's mother also got liver cancer because of overwork at her house. The cost of treatment was too high and completely unaffordable. Just when Shadow was at a dead end, he met a man. This man was playing with a strange coin. From his bracelet, it could be seen that he was Odin. Odin told Shadow that as long as he prayed to the gods, all his suffering would be solved by the gods. When Odin finished speaking, he disappeared. Shadow then really ran to the church to pray, but it was all in vain. His mother finally passed away due to her serious illness. From then on, he also became an atheist. Back in reality, the intense electric current woke Shadow up, facing the brutal torture of the city god. Shadow still did not reveal anything about Odin's plan, because when Shadow had nothing, Odin himself gave him the desire to live. The city god was angry and kicked the shelf under Shadow's feet, but Shadow did not regret his choice. Because of the death of the sun goddess, Odin was extremely heartbroken. He decided to get the eternal spear to deal with the new god. Laura did not agree because Shadow was still suffering at the place of the new gods, but Odin did not care. With no other choice, Laura had to go with Sweeney to rescue Shadow. Laura knew Shadow's location through her sensors, but halfway there, they came to a dead end. Sweeney couldn't stand it anymore, so he decided to help Laura. Sweeney hugged Laura tightly. A golden light appeared. The two successfully entered the time hole. Finally, they successfully reached the train where Shadow was held. The guards were quickly defeated by Laura and Sweeney. Through the sensor, Laura quickly found Shadow. One of her kicks broke the door. The city god was unfortunately hit and died on the spot. At the same time, Odin stopped the car right on the tracks. He intended to use his car to destroy the train, which was also the city god's base. Sure enough, the city god's train exploded. Even Laura, despite having a lucky coin, was shattered into pieces. But surprisingly, Shadow was only slightly injured under such a strong impact. Odin told Sweeney to take the rest of Laura, and he left Shadow in the wilderness. At this time, the new god Mr. World has completely upgraded the goddess of communication. The purpose is to allow her to merge with Argus. Argus is an ancient god with an all-seeing eye. Because of the change of the times, he also joined the side of the new god. Once the goddess of communication successfully merged with Argus, every place in the world would be controlled by Mr. World. But this perfect plan was soon known by Odin's crow. If this continues, Odin's situation will be very dangerous. After all information on the battlefield determines survival. Because the energy of the lucky coin in the body is weak, Laura's body also begins to rot continuously. Odin also seized this opportunity to negotiate with Laura. As long as Laura helps Odin kill Argus, her lucky coin will also be recharged. Faced with the attractive benefits, Laura happily agreed. But to kill Argus, Laura needs to use special tools, so Odin led Laura to another space. This place is called by Odin as the memory of the wasteland. There was a cow living inside. Odin told Laura not to underestimate this cow because it was Zeus's lover. Only a dagger sacrificed with its blood could kill Argus. Odin stabbed the dagger into the cow's neck without hesitation. As fresh blood flowed out, the cow turned into ashes. Just like that, an ordinary dagger turned into a weapon that could kill the new god. At this time, the goddess of communication was about to merge with Argus. When the goddess of communication touched Argus, she immediately felt an extremely powerful energy source. Countless optical fibers immediately connected to her. Just as the two were merging, Odin and Laura also arrived at the scene. The god of technology saw Odin and Laura coming, and he was obviously a little scared. After all, he could not fight Odin. Laura rushed in with a dagger. The god of technology did not have the courage to stop Laura. Just as the communication goddess and Argus successfully merged, Laura stabbed Argus in the neck with a dagger. Along with the failure of the fusion, the communication goddess was also repelled by a huge amount of energy. In the face of absolute power, the technology god could only carry the communication goddess away. Although Argus was about to die, Odin knew that he would somehow revive. Odin only reminded Argus that after he was resurrected, he would not choose the wrong side again. Along with Argus's death, the lucky coin in Laura's body immediately poured into a huge amount of energy. Therefore, her body also regained its vitality. Laura and Odin's cooperation ended here. But Laura still wanted to go with Odin, because after all, her husband was still unknown, whether he was alive or dead. Odin refused Laura's request because he seemed to have another plan. Odin knew that the woman before his eyes would eventually become his obstacle. Because of the technology god's timidity, it led to Argus's death. This made Miss World extremely angry. He intended to kill this useless guy immediately. In order to survive, the god of technology said that he had an intelligence network faster than Argus. This network was developed by one of his followers in Silicon Valley. Mr. World saw that he was confident in his assertion, so Mr. World gave him another chance. The god of technology did not dare to delay at all. He immediately went to his follower, Miss C. This bearded guy was America's top hacker genius. Although he was young, he had already developed an extremely powerful surveillance network. This time the god of technology came to ask Miss C to implant the Argus network into his body. That way, he could replace Argus's all-seeing eye. But unexpectedly, Miss C refused the god of technology, because in recent years the god of technology had not provided any help to Miss C. This limited Miss C's creativity. Just then, Miss World arrived. Seeing the stupidity of the god of technology, Miss World personally took action. Miss World showed Mr. C the latest technology. Miss C saw the brand new technology that had never existed before him, and immediately agreed to cooperate with Miss World. The god of technology saw the betrayal of his followers and understood that he had lost his value. He decided to escape from this complicated place, but Miss World had already sealed off the entire building. Just as he was running away in panic, he saw the technology ball that he had used to deal with Shadow. Just like that, the god of technology was sealed forever in the technology ball. At this time, the little goblin helped Odin find the seedling of the world tree, because the eternal spear was broken in the ancient battle and only the branches of the world tree could repair it. Every day Odin used holy water to take care of the world tree. At this time, the abandoned Shadow also came to Odin and expressed his dissatisfaction with him. It was clear that Shadow was almost killed by the new god, but Odin said that this was just a test for him. Shadow didn't know what else to say, because he was just a subordinate of Odin. But at night, something strange happened. Shadow couldn't control himself and took a knife to his throat. In the mirror, he saw his head on fire. There were also bullet holes on his body. In another development, this man read a mysterious spell on the ancient weapon. When his hand passed over the eternal spear, the ancient characters that had faded appeared again. It was at that moment that this ancient weapon was finally awakened. Odin looked at his familiar weapon that he hadn't seen for a long time, and his memory returned to the outbreak of World War II. At that time, Odin wanted to start a war, so he decided to cooperate with the German army. Then, Odin let his son, the thunder god Thor, join the German side. Thanks to that, Odin gained the power of faith, but Thor was not willing to be a tool of the German army. He just wanted to start a new life with his girlfriend. He absolutely did not want to be with his father, who only knew how to wage war. The crutch in Odin's hand immediately turned into an eternal spear, but Thor was still determined with his choice. Seeing Thor's stubbornness, Odin attacked him with the eternal spear, but Thor's faith was much stronger than Odin's. The eternal spear was broken by Thor's hammer. Odin knelt on the ground and begged Thor to stay by his side. Odin wanted to build a strong world with Thor, but these words did not work. Thor resolutely left this cruel father. Finally, Odin was able to plant the world tree and was able to repair the eternal spear. Odin cut a branch from the world tree and placed it in the broken spot of the eternal spear. He recited a spell. The eternal spear emitted a bright blue light. The damaged eternal spear was also successfully repaired, but Odin gave the eternal spear to Shadow because the war was coming, and this was a great responsibility that Odin gave Shadow. Shadow saw that Odin valued him, so he immediately took on this responsibility. Sweeney knew about this and immediately went to Shadow. Sweeney told Shadow that he was just a tool of Odin. When Shadow was no longer of any use, Odin would not hesitate to throw him away. Sweeney advised Shadow to stay away from Odin, but at this time, Shadow was completely manipulated by Odin, so he did not believe Sweeney's sincere advice. Sweeney looked at the idiot in front of him and immediately told Shadow his story. It turned out that Sweeney was once a king. He was also called the God of Light by everyone. During the time of constant war, the Danu tribe was dominated by the brutal Fomorians. Until Sweeney appeared, he rescued his people from the domination of the Fomorians. The leader of the Fomorians was Balor. He was also Sweeney's grandfather. grandfather. A god had prophesied that he would die at the hands of his descendants, so he drowned all of his descendants in the sea. But Sweeney was lucky to survive and even killed his grandfather. With Balor's death, Sweeney's memories were awakened. Sweeney remembered that Balor's head had turned into Odin's. It turned out that it was all Odin's plan. Balor was just a clone of Odin. Odin's purpose was to control the Danu tribe. After Sweeney regained his memories, he decided to kill Odin. Sweeney hoped that Shadow wouldn't interfere because this was a personal matter between him and Odin, but Shadow was determined to protect Odin even if he died. The eyes of the two were filled with determination. A great war was about to break out. Odin watched the two fight, but he didn't care. Odin still leisurely enjoyed his meal, but Sweeney was clearly no match for Shadow. At that moment, Sweeney said that his wife's death was ordered by Odin. Shadow could not believe it. Shadow trusted Odin so much that he did that. Shadow wanted to ask Odin the truth, but Sweeney took the opportunity to pick up the eternal spear on the ground and stab it towards Odin. Shadow sensed danger, so he reflexively grabbed the eternal spear and stabbed it through Sweeney's body. In the last moment before Sweeney died, he turned the eternal spear into the treasure of the sun. Odin tried to repair the eternal spear so he could fight the new god, but unexpectedly his plan was ruined by Sweeney. At this time, the new god also started to act against the old god. Mr. World told the goddess of media to control online information. She changed the killer's image to Shadow and Odin. Odin knew about this and immediately fled during the night. At this time, Shadow watched the news on TV and realized that he had become a killer, but now he wanted to run, but it was too late. The Federal Bureau of Investigation received a clue from Miss World. World provided, so they quickly surrounded the house where Shadow was. Shadow panicked and tried to escape through the back door. But at that moment, the vines of the world tree wrapped around Shadow's ankles. Shadow was pulled into the inner space of the world tree. Shadow kept falling, and countless pieces of memories appeared before his eyes. At this time, Shadow knew that the god of war, Odin, was his father. Shadow was part of Odin's plan from the beginning. After Shadow learned the truth, he angrily slashed at the world tree. With a beam of light, the world tree and Shadow both disappeared. At the same time, Odin was enjoying VIP service at a luxury restaurant. Odin completely did not care about Shadow's life or death. The most pitiful was Sweeney. In order to have his own battlefield, Sweeney followed Odin, but unexpectedly, Odin was Sweeney's enemy. In the end, Laura took Sweeney's body to find a way to revive him. It's been half a year since Shadow was taken away by the world tree. It turned out that Shadow was now working as a forklift driver at a factory in Milwaukee. It was clear that Shadow was enjoying his current peaceful life, but Shadow's life was destined to be anything but normal. On his way home, he accidentally saw an old woman about to fall. Shadow kindly stepped forward to help the old woman, but unexpectedly, while they were talking, the old woman's voice gradually changed into Odin's voice. It was clear that Odin had found Shadow. Indeed, Odin had been waiting on the road Shadow had passed, but at this moment, Odin looked a bit miserable. Shadow did not pity Odin because he knew Odin definitely had bad intentions. Odin declared that he had come to save Shadow. Shadow did not believe Odin's words at all, but Odin did not seem to care because everything was under his control. Sure enough, after Shadow returned home, he discovered that the federal organization was investigating him. Obviously, this was all information revealed by Odin, just to make Shadow return to his side. Odin had been waiting for Shadow in the car for a long time. Shadow had nowhere else to go, so he had to follow Odin. Shadow knew that Odin had not given up on fighting Mr. World, but halfway through, the car encountered some new gods. It was clear that Miss World wanted to destroy them completely. Odin was not afraid at all, so he let Shadow drive. Then Odin told Shadow to accelerate towards the new god. Shadow could only obediently follow Odin's words when surrounded by a group of new gods. Then Odin chanted a spell from behind. Ancient symbols appeared on the windshield along with the spell. As soon as Shadow could not see the road, Odin told him to turn right. Shadow was clearly a little confused, but to survive, Shadow could only trust Odin. With the sharp turn of the car, Odin and Shadow entered another space. This was the territory of the local gods. They needed to pass through a car to get out of here. Odin told Shadow to follow him closely, but Shadow was clearly attracted by the scene before his eyes, so he quickly forgot Odin's instructions. When Shadow realized, Odin had already disappeared, but Shadow accidentally met the local gods. The local god glanced and knew Shadow's identity. He told Shadow that Ragnarok was coming. Humanity was on the verge of destruction. Only Shadow could stop it all. Many years ago, there was a lovely boy who was going to the supermarket with his mother, but unexpectedly, the person in the magazine moved. She also told the boy that he had a great mission, and they had been waiting for him to appear. Just as the boy was confused, a giant bull with fiery eyes stepped out. The boy saw this, and immediately ran away. Just as the boy was about to be gored to death by the bull, the giant bull suddenly stopped. It seemed to be recognizing the boy's identity. It turned out that this lovely boy was Shadow when he was young. Since childhood, Shadow has always had the same dream, and that giant bull is the incarnation of Odin. Shadow has been part of Odin's plan since childhood. He just doesn't know what that plan is yet. The local god told Shadow that when his mind and body are united, he will know everything. While the two were talking, Odin arrived. Obviously, Odin didn't want the local god to continue talking. The two also had complicated grudges with each other. Hundreds of years ago, the people of the local god were massacred by Odin's subordinates. So until now, the local god still hates Odin. But Odin feels that they are just victims of war, so the local god can't blame him. When the local god heard this, he became angry and revealed his true form. He decided to teach Odin a lesson. Shadow saw this, and immediately stopped him and dragged his father away. After Shadow learned the truth, he decided to cut ties with this lying father. But Odin couldn't let Shadow go so easily. Just as the two were arguing, a bus drove up. A beautiful young girl got off the bus. This person was Odin's fiancée, Cordelia. Shadow was obviously a little confused. At this time, Odin said he wanted to go find the god of war Tyr to borrow some money. Odin asked Shadow if he wanted to go with him, but Shadow did not want to be used by Odin anymore, so he firmly refused. Odin took out a key and gave it to Shadow. This was the key to an apartment in Lakeside town. Shadow thought that this unreliable father had finally done a good deed. After a long trip, Odin finally took Shadow to Lakeside town while he went to Wisconsin to find Tyr to borrow money. When Shadow arrived at the apartment, he found a letter. The sender was Zoria. Zoria invited Shadow to attend the funeral of the sun goddess. Zoria told Shadow to bring the coin she gave him. Faced with the invitation of his savior, Shadow did not dare to delay. The next day, he went to the funeral scene, but when he arrived, he discovered that he had been tricked by his evil father. Shadow did not want to talk to Odin anymore. Shadow expressed his condolences to Zoria's second sister. Then, Shadow went to the rooftop. At this time, Zoria had long been waiting for Shadow's appearance. Zoria looked at the coin and discovered that Shadow would have to face two choices in the future. Shadow had to choose the most cruel path to get the fate he wanted. At this time, Shadow really wanted to know what choice it was, but Zoria only knew that much. She put the coin in the starry sky and it turned into the moon. Zoria told Shadow that when he lost his way, the starry sky would guide him. In another development, a woman took a stick and broke the man's head just because the man said the wrong thing. At this time, the remaining employees were extremely terrified. In fact, they were the faceless gods of Mist World. This woman was Mr. World. He had now transformed into a female form. It was not difficult to see that his temper had also become more irritable. At the same time, the god of technology also appeared. But Mr. World was not satisfied with his performance because he had not yet completed his mission of seducing Queen Sheba. Mr. World said that if he failed to seduce Queen Sheba, he would end up like the man just now. The god of technology did not dare to delay any longer, so he immediately went to Queen Sheba. It was clear that Queen Sheba was now living a very happy life. The god of technology also directly stated his purpose of coming here, but Queen Sheba resolutely refused him. She only wanted to remain neutral. She did not want to get involved in the war between the new god and the old god. The god of technology used the debt to force her to join the side of the new god. Because Queen Sheba did not have the beliefs of humans, when she was wandering the streets, it was the god of technology who helped her. That's why she got the wealth she has today. This is also the reason why Queen Sheba previously provided information to the new god, but now she was determined not to participate in their war anymore, because she witnessed the cruelty of war. Obviously, the god of technology had no awareness of war. Queen Sheba decided to show him the cruelty of war. With the contact of the two, the god of technology immediately collapsed. Next, he was pulled into Queen Sheba's memory. The god of technology could not have expected Queen Sheba to have such a cruel experience. The god of technology experienced the fear of death and hurriedly ran away. Since Since Sweeney was killed by Shadow, Laura has always carried Sweeney's body with her. She tried to find a way to revive him. Laura found a grave and placed Sweeney on top of the stone coffin. She decides to return the lucky coin to Sweeney so he can live again. Even though Laura knew that she would die without the coin, she had no regrets. After going through so many things, Laura had developed feelings for Sweeney. Laura wrote her last words on Sweeney's forehead. She wanted him to find the eternal spear to kill Odin for her after he was resurrected. After Laura finished writing, she stabbed the dagger into her body with the body of the dead man. Laura clearly did not feel any pain, but as soon as Laura took out the coin, her body began to lose control. Laura placed the lucky coin in Sweeney's hand, but before Laura could finish placing it, she fell down. The lucky coin rolled to the ground. In another development, in order to attract the ancient gods, Odin and Chernobog performed a play. Odin had to take advantage of the death of the sun goddess to make the ancient gods hate the new god. Obviously, this trick was quite effective. Of course, Shadow had already seen through Odin's scheme, so Shadow decided to return to Lakeside town and stay away from Odin. Shadow didn't want to be used by Odin anymore, but Shadow didn't know that something big had happened in Lakeside town. Shadow returned to town and prepared to have lunch, but unexpectedly, everyone here was looking at him. This made Shadow a little confused. When the police saw Shadow's car, they also came. It turned out that a little girl in town had mysteriously disappeared. Shadow became the biggest suspect because the town's population was not large, and Shadow had only been going in and out of town recently. All suspicions were directed towards Shadow. Shadow reluctantly told the police all his journey. After that, Shadow went home and found out that this town had a series of missing children. It seemed that this town was not simple. Shadow looked at the magazine and slowly fell into a dream. Then, he went to the supermarket in his dream. Only this time the person in the magazine had turned into the Queen of Sheba. Just then, the Queen of Sheba in the magazine tells Shadow to go save her. It turned out that Queen Sheba had swallowed a powerful figure named Bill. Bill was Mr. World's most important partner. Bill's phone was in Queen Sheba's hand. When Queen Sheba read the message she was sent, she was very regretful because she found out that Bill had a family. The message was sent by his daughter. At that moment, Bill's bodyguards arrived. Sensing danger, Queen Sheba kicked Bill's phone under the sofa. Then she picked up her fan as a weapon and prepared to fight. At this time, the bodyguards broke the door and rushed in, but Queen Sheba did not have human beliefs, so when she faced these thugs, she was clearly no match for them. She was quickly pinned down on the table. A dose of anesthetic injected into her neck knocked Queen Sheba down. When Miss World learned that Bill had been swallowed, he was extremely angry, but Miss World still hoped that Queen Sheba would join the side of the new god. Queen Sheba completely ignored Miss World. She continued to kneel on the ground and repent for her sins. Seeing that Queen Sheba was stubborn, Mr. World decided to lock her here forever. But not long after Mr. World left, Queen Sheba's tears of repentance fell and cracked the ground. At this time, Laura was taking the elevator to the final judgment court. With the change of the times, the judgment court also became more modern. Everyone has their own ticket, and this ticket will decide whether they go to heaven or hell. But Laura did not accept her fate. Obviously, she was a little impatient. She threw her ticket in the face of the staff. Laura knew that with her sinful life, she could not go to heaven, so she secretly exchanged someone else's ticket. Then she took the corresponding entrance ticket, but she did not expect that there were countless doors here. All of them could not be opened. Just as she was confused, the space behind her suddenly collapsed rapidly. Laura saw this and ran away. In a hurry, Laura ran into a door. She stood up and found that it was an empty cinema room. When she opened the door, there was already a void outside. Laura had no choice but to obediently wait for the people involved to appear. Just as Laura was about to fall asleep, two boatmen rowed the souls in. They wanted to let Laura review her life, because souls must realize their own lives before they can rest in peace. But Laura had no patience to review them. She turned around and was about to leave. Unexpectedly, as soon as she opened the door, she fell into the water. The water was so deep that the bottom could not be seen. It was like an endless abyss. At that moment, a hand pulled Laura up. This person was the boatman. After that, Laura calmed down. The boatman continued to show her the scenes of her life. She saw her promiscuous father and her desperate mother. In such a family environment, Laura also inherited her father's promiscuous nature, so she also became a person who did not know how to love anyone. Actually, Laura did not love Shadow at all. It was just that she never admitted it. At this time, Laura had also accepted her miserable life, and she would calmly accept the judgment of fate. At this time, a boy discovered Sweeney's body in the grave. At this time, Sweeney had almost turned into a dry corpse. Not long after, a group of people wrapped Sweeney's body and took it away. Only the boy's father stayed to clean up Sweeney's blood, but he did not pay attention to the medicine bottle covered with Laura's ashes. This medicine bottle was obtained by Sweeney with great difficulty from the hands of the voodoo god. This was the medicine that could revive Laura, but it needed to be mixed with the blood of true love for it to take effect and revive her. So Sweeney never took it out to use. While the man was cleaning the blood, the water pipe suddenly became clogged. When the man was about to unclog the pipe, he accidentally broke the medicine bottle on the ground. At this time, Sweeney's blood also flowed down from the stone coffin. Coincidentally, it mixed with the solution of the resurrection potion. Then a golden light appeared. Laura was immediately pulled away by a mysterious force. The boatman was confused and didn't understand what was going on. Laura was finally revived. When the man saw Laura, he was obviously a little surprised. Laura couldn't believe it either. When Laura saw the lucky coin on the ground, she knew that Sweeney was dead. Laura originally wanted to sacrifice herself to bring Sweeney back to life, but in the end, she ruined everything. The man gave Sweeney's ashes to Laura. Laura knew that Sweeney was a god. Even if he died, his power was still there. It turned out that Sweeney used all his remaining blood to revive Laura. Only then did Laura know that she loved Sweeney, so his blood could revive her. At this time, Shadow was sleeping, but unexpectedly, he had a strange dream. Shadow saw Queen Sheba in a magazine calling for his help. Shadow was the son of a god, so he knew that Queen Sheba must have been in trouble. So the next day, Shadow went to Queen Sheba's residence. Sure enough, her house was in chaos. There was a lot of blood on the ground. Shadow didn't know where Queen Sheba had gone. At that moment, Shadow saw the god of technology trembling in the corner. His first reaction was to think that the god of technology had killed Queen Sheba. Shadow angrily threw the god of technology away. But at this moment, the god of technology seemed to have failed. It turned out that since Queen Sheba had put the god of technology into her memory, his body had been constantly failing. This was also the reason why the god of technology had come to find Queen Sheba. But Shadow clearly didn't believe his lies. The god of technology had to take out the surveillance camera footage for Shadow to see. When Shadow learned the truth, he decided to find Bill's bodyguards first. Shadow questioned them about Queen Sheba's whereabouts. The god of technology wanted to solve the problem with his body, so he also said that he would go with Shadow. Shadow quickly kidnapped one of Bill's bodyguards. The two took him to a deserted alley and questioned them about Queen Sheba's whereabouts. But unexpectedly, this guy stubbornly refused to confess. At this time, the god of technology's ability took effect. With a scream, the god of technology revealed his terrifying true form. When the bodyguard saw this, he was immediately scared. He immediately revealed the location where Queen Sheba was being held. The two did not hesitate and immediately went there to rescue her. But at this moment, Queen Sheba was undergoing an unprecedented transformation. Her tears of repentance cracked the ground. When her fingers touched it, the tears immediately turned into a puddle. Queen Sheba saw her sinful life in it. Thousands of years ago, Queen Sheba killed King Solomon and succeeded in ascending the throne. At the same time, she was also cursed. She could only devour others to sustain her life. This made her extremely miserable. Just as she was regretting, a mysterious woman appeared before her eyes. The woman brought Queen Sheba into the spiritual world. It turned out that they were people with Queen Sheba's poor divine power. Along with Queen Sheba's repentance, they were also awakened. So Queen Sheba's ability was also completely awakened. She used her strength to kick the ground, and the ground immediately exploded. A mysterious force caused water to flow. At this time, Shadow and the god of technology also arrived, but it seemed that they had nothing more to do. The guards inside had long since died. Just as Shadow was confused, Queen Sheba slowly walked out of the water. Queen Sheba sees Shadow and asks if he has come to save her. In another development, the dentist took advantage of the boy's inattention to pull out the rotten tooth with his hand. Before the boy could react, the tooth had already been pulled out. This person was Odin's real brother. He was the god of war, Tyr. It could be said that Tyr's fighting power was absolutely not inferior to Odin's, but with the change of the times, Tyr had to work as a dentist. Obviously, Tyr's business was doing very well now. This also made Odin pay attention to Tyr's money. After all, the war with the new god could not be without the support of money. Odin also made it clear that he hoped Tyr could sponsor a little for the war. Odin did not expect that Tyr would happily agree. This made Odin a little confused. The amount of money Tyr gave was not small. Before leaving, Tyr also said that if Odin needed it, he would be willing to join the fight. But Odin knew that Tyr wanted to kill him more than anyone. Tyr's hand was also bitten off by the giant wolf Fenrir. Because of Odin, even the goddess Tyr once loved, Demeter, was taken by Odin. It was obvious that the two were just pretending to be close. But anyway, Odin got the money. When Odin returned home, he found the news on TV about his followers dying strangely in just one night. This did not seem to be the work of the new god, so Odin went to a pub to find John to clarify the truth. This person was John, the lead singer of a band. John was also one of Odin's loyal followers. Odin told John to take on the identity of a singer to attract followers. From there, Odin could gain the believers. John's true form was a giant bear. He often lost control of his emotions and went crazy. Odin suspected that John had killed his teammates in a fit of rage. This clearly angered John. John stabbed a dagger through his palm to prove his innocence. Odin looked at this idiot like that, and he also had a headache. But John was still a follower of Odin, and he had to use John to gain his faith. Even if John killed his comrades, Odin could only pretend not to know anything. But it was not over yet. On Odin's way home, a fireball suddenly fell from the sky right in front of his car. Odin hurriedly went forward to see, but unexpectedly the fireball in front of him was a charred corpse. Only then did Odin realize that this matter was not as simple as he thought. It was clear that someone was declaring war on Mami. To clarify the truth, Odin went to find John to question him, but he did not know that a strange pair of eyes was watching his every move. Odin quickly led Cordelia to John's residence. This person's name was Dunk. His true form was also a giant bear. He was also John's real brother. He looked stupid on the outside, but was actually very ferocious. He used to take pleasure in eating human flesh. His methods were extremely cruel. Now he was a butcher. Odin did not hesitate to explain his purpose of coming here, but Dunk said that John was not here. Before Odin left, he said he was going to see a dentist. Odin immediately realized the seriousness of the problem. Tyr had just finished work, but unexpectedly a giant bear blocked his way. Tyr had an idea. He wanted to use his love to tame it. At this time, Odin also heard the news and rushed over. But Odin discovered that Tyr's hospital had been destroyed, and there was a lot of blood on the ground. Odin followed the blood trail forward, but did not expect the victim to be John. At this point, his body had been disemboweled, and there was a note on the body. Tyr wrote that Odin should go to the wolf's den to find him. Only then did Odin learn that Tyr had been killing his followers. At the same time, Tyr appeared in Shadow's house and lied that Odin had met with something. Tyr told Shadow to go with him to find Odin, but unexpectedly, Tyr used the excuse of refueling to stop in the middle of the road. Then Tyr gave Shadow coffee. Shadow walked a few steps and then started to lose his balance. Only then did he realize he had been tricked. At this time, the kind young man next to him stepped forward to check the situation, but Tyr directly ripped out his throat. When Shadow woke up, Tyr had taken him to the wolf's den. Shadow did not understand why Tyr did that. It turned out that thousands of years ago, the position of the Norse god king was originally Tyr's. The appearance of Odin had taken away Tyr's throne. Tyr's hand was also bitten off by a giant wolf because of Odin. This wolf was named Fenrir, Rocky's son. Thousands of years ago, Fenrir was very ferocious. Wherever it went, no one could survive. So the gods secretly created an eternal chain to tie it at the entrance to the divine world. But at that time, Odin deliberately provoked Fenrir. He wanted to see if it had the strength to break free from its chains. Fenrir was not stupid. It asked Odin to put its hand in its mouth. Odin was not easily fooled. Odin firmly refused Fenrir. At this time, Tyr voluntarily offered his hand. Fenrir bit off Tyr's hand. Odin mocked Tyr for being stupid. Later, the goddess Demeter that Tyr loved was also taken by Odin. From then on, Tyr hated Odin very much. Back in reality, Odin finally appeared at the wolf's den. Odin said that he had always known that Tyr hated him. This battle was all caused by Tyr's jealousy. This made Tyr extremely angry. Obviously, Tyr was no match for Odin in terms of argument, but in terms of strength, Tyr was fearless. Odin told Tyr to spare Shadow, and he was willing to offer his life in exchange. This clearly moved Shadow, but Odin said that because he was the Norse god of war, he wanted to die on the battlefield. Odin took out his necklace and opened a space. Odin challenged Tyr. With a dazzling light, the three people present all arrived at the battlefield. Tyr took the initiative to attack Odin first. Seeing the two gods fight, Shadow could only stand there Tyr in amazement, but Odin was clearly no match for Tyr. Very quickly, Odin was sent flying by Tyr. Just as Tyr was about to deal the finishing blow to Odin, Shadow stopped him in time. As a result, Shadow was thrown away by Tyr. Because of Shadow's intervention, Tyr had to take his life. Suddenly, Odin used his sword to pierce through Tyr's body. Just like that, the battle ended. Odin was satisfied and said that Shadow was now more and more like him. In fact, Shadow's ambition was not inferior to Odin's. This was something that was already in him. Then, with the ancient characters flashing, Odin carried Tyr's body away. The scene changed. Shadow was standing on the ice when suddenly a giant black shadow flew by. The black shadow fell onto the ice and disappeared. Just as Shadow was wondering, he slipped, fell. This fall also made him see more strange things. He saw an unidentified object under the ice. Shadow hurriedly wiped the ice, but unexpectedly, under the ice there was an elephant made of gold. This elephant spat out a gold coin. The gold coin burned through the ice and automatically ran under an old car. This seemed to be a clue for Shadow. Just as Shadow was confused, a woman suddenly ran over. Shadow asked the woman if she saw the gold coin, but she thought he fell, and he temporarily lost his mind. When Shadow looked back at the gold coin, it had already disappeared. At the same time, a murder happened in the town. A young man did something stupid at home. These things made Shadow have a bad premonition. At that time, the police discovered the clothes of the girl who had been missing at the scene. The police concluded that the teenager did something stupid because he was afraid of being punished. But the more Shadow thought about it, the more he realized it was wrong. This was obviously a setup. Just as Shadow was wondering, the power of darkness suddenly appeared. The books beside him were suddenly covered with ice. Shadow quickly flipped through the books to find clues. Sure enough, it was written that every year, young people died. The time of death for each person was between the 28th and the 30th. Shadow immediately went to the local police. Shadow told Charlie about this important discovery, but Charlie was completely indifferent. Obviously, he had no intention of finding out the truth, so Shadow could only leave. On the way home, Shadow happened to meet the townspeople holding an ice sculpture festival. At this time, the supermarket owner walked over. Seeing Shadow's depressed expression, the supermarket owner told him not to let unpleasant things ruin this wonderful evening. Just as the two were talking, Shadow saw the ice sculpture in the distance glowing. He hurriedly went forward to take a look. Unexpectedly, there was a gold coin inside. This gold coin came out from the ice sculpture. Shadow picked up the gold coin and recognized it as the gold coin on the ice this morning. This seemed to be a hint from some god to Shadow. He immediately ran to the ice to find the old car. He opened the trunk and found the missing girl inside. Just as Shadow was feeling sorry for the girl, the ice suddenly broke. Both he and the car fell into the water. But the next scene surprised Shadow even more. He only saw a blue light, and the girl's soul flew out of the car. But she was not alone. Many young souls appeared at the bottom of the lake. As soon as Shadow swam up from the water, he appeared in the supermarket owner's house. When Shadow came out of the bathroom, he found that she seemed to have been waiting for him. She said that he had been submerged in the lake for so long without dying. It seemed like there was a powerful guardian deity protecting him. Obviously, she was not an ordinary person. At this moment, Shadow suddenly remembered that she held a car guessing contest every year. Whoever guessed the time the car sank to the bottom of the lake correctly would win a very attractive prize. This meant that every year, young people who went missing were put in the car by her. The boy who did that foolish thing was also created by her to fake the scene, but Shadow did not understand why she did that. It turned out that she was the god of this town. In order to bring development to the town, she had to sacrifice a young person every year. But these young people were not sacrificed to herself, but to Odin, because Odin had helped her with something. The town god hoped that Shadow would not interfere in her affairs. After all, he was Odin's son, so she did not want to make things difficult for him. But just then, Charlie appeared. The policeman shot the town god several times, but it was useless. Her wound healed itself. At this moment, Charlie also realized that she was not human. At that moment, she knocked the gun out of Charlie's hand. With just one punch, she sent him flying. Suddenly, Shadow saw a bloody dagger hanging on the wall. He seemed to realize that this dagger could kill the town god. At this moment, Charlie was about to be strangled to death. Shadow did not hesitate anymore. He stepped forward and hugged the town god. Then he immediately stabbed her in the neck. Along with the blood pouring out, the whole room was burned. The town god also died in the sea of fire. Thus, the curse of Lakeside town was also over. After that, Shadow went to the restaurant to treat himself to a delicious meal. But at that moment, a familiar voice rang out. Shadow turned his head and found that it was his deceased wife, Laura. But this time, Laura did not come to reconcile with Shadow, but to inquire about Odin's whereabouts, because Laura wanted to kill Odin. After all, Laura and Sweeney's deaths were caused by Odin, but Shadow could not tell Laura. After all, Odin was Shadow's biological father. Laura did not know this, so she hoped that Shadow could tell her about Odin's whereabouts. Shadow reluctantly told Laura the truth that Odin was his father. Laura was obviously a little surprised when she heard this. Laura saw that Shadow did not seem to be joking, but Laura was determined to kill Odin. Since Shadow refused to speak, Laura had no choice but to leave. After Laura said goodbye to Shadow, she went to find her best friend Salim. From Salim, Laura learned that Odin had been in the conference room in Cleveland to attract followers, so Laura went with Salim to Cleveland to check on the situation. But the conference room was closed early. Just when the two were at a loss for words, an old man suddenly appeared behind them. It turned out that he was Mr. World in disguise. He said that he could help Laura kill Odin, but he needed her to do it herself. He would give her Odin's exact address. After success, he would take her away safely. The prerequisite was that this matter had to be kept secret, because once Odin found out about this, he would go crazy and take revenge on them. Laura, with so much hatred, didn't think much about it and immediately agreed. But killing Odin wasn't easy. Laura needed to go into the sun's treasure to get the eternal spear. Only then could she kill Odin. Then Laura received a phone call. This phone had satellite positioning, and it would lead Laura to the destination. It would also guide her how to get the eternal spear. The two of them followed the instructions and quickly arrived at their destination. As soon as they entered the door, there was a hint, but the hint on it tells Laura to go find a dwarf goblin in Ireland. In another development, this man sent a kiss, and a butterfly came out of his mouth. The landlady was very surprised to see this scene, but then a flock of beautiful butterflies flew out of the man's mouth. The butterflies would help this motel do well. They flew to the billboard above the motel and then turned into peacocks. The day before, the landlady was reading a magazine when suddenly an Asian man ran into her motel. He said that the police were chasing him. Once they caught him, they would kill him immediately. The landlady saw this and gave him a room key and told the man to hide there. The police finally arrived, and the landlady was calmly waiting for them. The police told the landlady that they were chasing a gay man. The landlady heard this and was even more determined to help the man, because they were the same people. At that moment, the landlady saw a policeman next to her. She recognized the policeman at a glance as her old lover. It turned out that when she was in high school, she was still a handsome young man. The policeman had also loved her at that time. Now she looked completely like a woman, but he still recognized her. She did not expect that after so many years, he would still recognize her. He helped the boss escape the police's questioning. Finally, the police left. The next day, she brought breakfast to the Asian man. The man did not understand why she was so kind to her. She said that it was because he and she were similar people. He told her his identity. It turned out that hundreds of years ago, he had fallen in love with a Chinese official, but after being discovered, he was sentenced to death. After being killed, his spirit still haunted the official. The official had to build him a temple. From then on, he received the worship of the people. He also became a god with faith, but she obviously did not believe him. On the day of his departure, he wished the inn good business. He also wished her a long life and eternal youth, and that the inn would also become a refuge for homosexuals. After leaving the inn, he never appeared again. After 70 years, the inn indeed grew more and more prosperous. The bartender in the inn was the Irish elf that Laura was looking for, named Doyle. Laura did not hesitate to directly state her purpose of coming here, but when Doyle heard Laura say her name, he thought she was a fraud. Because Doyle knew that Odin had killed Laura, Laura had to take out Sweeney's lucky coin. Only when Doyle saw the lucky coin did he believe. It turned out that when Odin killed Laura, the first person he looked for was Doyle. But Doyle immediately rejected Odin, because Doyle was kind-hearted and had never killed an innocent person. Odin was angry and destroyed Doyle's lucky coin. That's why he became a bartender, like now. Doyle said that he could help Laura get into the sun's treasure to get the eternal spear. But in return, this lucky coin would belong to him. Although Laura was very reluctant, but in order to get revenge, Laura still agreed to give Doyle the lucky coin. Doyle immediately took the lucky coin and went to the sun's treasure. Laura knew that it would only take a few seconds to get the spear, and come out, but Laura waited for a long time and still didn't see Doyle come back. She realized that she had been tricked. Laura originally wanted to get the Eternal Spear to kill Odin, but she didn't expect that even Sweeney's lucky coin would be tricked. Laura then scattered Sweeney's ashes into the river. Laura planned to go find Odin alone to get revenge. But just then, Doyle suddenly appeared. Laura finally got the Eternal Spear. But not everyone can use the Eternal Spear. Moreover, Laura is an ordinary person, so Doyle decided to teach Laura how to use it. Seeing Laura's persistent practice, Doyle returned the lucky coin to her. With the lucky coin, Laura had the physical strength of a half-god. She easily threw the Eternal Spear hundreds of meters away. At the same time, Odin came to Chicago to find Chernobog, but now he had clearly lost the will to fight. Odin decided to negotiate peace with the new god. Of course, it was all Odin's scheme. Chernobog didn't understand, so he didn't agree, because without war, they would have no faith, and this meant they would gradually be forgotten by everyone. Chernobog went to the rooftop and swung his dark hammer to vent his anger, but Chernobog still decided to go with Odin to negotiate peace with the new god. The next day they arrived at the negotiation site. Mr. World also received an invitation to the negotiations. Odin said that war only hurts both sides and he hopes to reconcile with the new god, but Mr. World did not want that. Miss World only gave Odin a corner to live. It was clear that Mr. World wanted to destroy everything. Before Mr. World left, he said that it would not be long before the ancient gods would be destroyed one by one. Odin could not respond to a single word, but Chernobog could not accept it. He could not believe that the war god Odin was now so weak. Chernobog said that even if Odin did not participate in the war anymore, he would summon the ancient gods to wage war against the new god, but Odin did not respond. Chernobog was very disappointed. Just as they were about to leave, Laura appeared with the Eternal Spear. Under the eyes of the gods, Laura raised the Eternal Spear and pointed it at Odin, but Odin seemed to have been waiting for this moment. Odin did not resist. Chernobog saw this and immediately summoned the power of the god. The sky was instantly covered by the power of darkness. At this moment, Laura held the lucky coin tightly and threw the Eternal Spear at Odin. Chernobog immediately swung his giant hammer at Laura. Fortunately, Doyle appeared in time at the critical moment and pushed Laura to the ground. At the same time, the new god who secretly protected Laura arrived and helped her retreat. Before Laura left, she threw the lucky coin to Doyle. At this time, Chernobog's giant hammer hit Doyle straight in the face, but with the help of the coin, Doyle still escaped. Odin was directly pierced by the Eternal Spear. Under the powerful force, Odin was pushed away and died instantly. Meanwhile, Shadow in the remote town of Lakeside also felt the will that Odin conveyed before he died. Odin's two ravens, Hugin and Munin, also found Shadow. After Shadow learned of this news, he immediately went to the place where Odin's body was kept. The moon god Ibis said that this is the center of atheism, so no god can use his power in this hotel. This is the most suitable place for the new god and the old god to negotiate. Mr. World will hand over Laura here. Obviously, this is all Miss World's scheme. As soon as Shadow entered the hotel, Cordelia ran to hug him. She told him that Laura killed Odin. At this time, Laura was also arranged by Miss World to stay in this hotel. Poor Laura still doesn't know that tonight she will be handed over to the old god by Miss World. Miss World wants to use Laura to kill Odin to get revenge without unnecessary trouble. Before leaving, Mr. World said that all the old gods are here, and once Laura is discovered by the old god, she will definitely die. At the same time, Shadow wanted to go in to see Odin's body, but he was stopped by Chernobog, because he had to wait until after midnight to enter. So he said he wanted to guard Odin. But according to Norse tradition, if one wanted to guard a god, one had to tie oneself to the world tree for 9 days and 9 nights. This was a test of endurance for the gods, but for a human, it was no different from a death sentence. But Shadow was determined to guard his father. He was clearly very confident in his own abilities. At midnight, Laura still had doubts about Mr. World, so she escaped through the ventilation shaft. But she accidentally came to the room where Odin's body was kept. Just then, footsteps were heard outside. Laura quickly hid under Odin's body. It turned out that the new god and the old god had come to negotiate. Mr. World said that he could hand over the killer who killed Odin. Miss World blamed everything on Laura. Laura was hiding underneath and heard everything. Laura cursed Miss World inwardly. Ibis said that according to Norse tradition, Shadow had to avenge his father. Under the witness of the gods, Shadow had no choice but to agree. It was clear that Mr. World's purpose had been achieved. Mr. World led the ancient god to Laura's room, but Laura had already escaped. Chernobog discovered that Laura had escaped through the ventilation pipe. Chernobog turned around to question Mr. World. At that moment, the faceless god brought Laura in. Faced with Mr. World's betrayal, Laura did not intend to die alone. She had told him all of his plans. Even the fact that he helped her get the eternal spear and told her the exact location of Odin, these were all orders from Mr. World to Laura. It was clear that this time, Mr. World could no longer escape punishment. After Chernobog learned the truth, he angrily swung his dark hammer at Mr. World. But in this hotel, the power of the gods was restrained, so Chernobog's power could not hurt Mr. World at all. Ibis said to finish Odin's funeral first, and they could deal with Mr. World later. Hearing this, Chernobog had no choice but to give up. Mr. World knew that the ancient gods would not let him off easily. Before leaving, he said that he was ready to accept the challenge at any time. The ancient gods also prepared to take Odin's body to the world tree. Before leaving, Chernobog gave the dark hammer to Shadow. Chernobog told Shadow to finish off Laura, but Shadow could not do anything to his beloved ex-wife. Laura said that Odin was just using Shadow. She advised him not to do useless things for Odin anymore. But Shadow was determined to guard Odin. This also meant that Shadow would have to go through 9 days and 9 nights of hardship on the world tree. When Chernobog saw that Shadow did not kill Laura, he immediately taught Shadow a lesson. Shadow said that he was Odin's only heir, so how to deal with the culprit was his right. Hearing this, Chernobog was so angry that he was speechless. At the same time in the hotel, Laura was visited by Queen Sheba again. Turned out that the day before, Queen Sheba learned Shadow's secret through the goddess of love. She saw that Shadow was no longer intact because he had a soulmate. That person was Laura. In another development, the god of technology was biting the data cable on the ground. This scene was caught by a new god. He thought the god of technology had gone crazy. It turned out that the last time the god of technology was brought into her memory by Queen Sheba, his body had failed. He had no choice but to go to the repair system. But the repair system said that he had to insert the number 1 object, Herne. So when Mr. World was not there, the god of technology frantically searched for the number 1 object. The new god obviously did not want the god of technology to achieve his goal, so he took out the technology ball that had sealed the god of technology. He wanted to once again lock the god of technology into this box. But the current god of technology seems to have obtained some kind of power. He can even control the technology sphere. The god of technology sealed the new god in the technology sphere. After tireless efforts, the god of technology finally found the number 1 object. But he did not expect that after so much searching, what he found was just an ugly stone. However, when he touched the number 1 object, a powerful energy surged into his brain. This stone represented the original flame of human civilization. It was also the symbol of the god of technology. At that moment, Miss World also arrived. The god of technology asked Mr. World what the number 1 object was. Mr. World told the god of technology that this was his symbol, and he also represented the origin of human technology. Along with the advancement of technology, the god of technology would also evolve in power. In return, the god of technology would forget his origin. It could be said that he was the strongest of the new gods. He was also Mr. World's most important tool. This is also the reason why Mr. World kept him alive even though the god of technology kept making mistakes. Mr. World imprisoned the god of technology here. The god of technology asked Mr. World who he was, but Miss World only said that deception was his forte. It turned out that Mr. World was the god of deception, Loki. At this time, the ancient gods also came to the world tree. The world tree was also the core of the power of the Norse gods. Odin also sacrificed him to the world tree. Now Shadow came to guard Odin. Shadow would have to go through 9 days and 9 nights of hardship on the world tree. The 3 women accompanying him were the 3 Norn goddesses. Their task was to water the world tree with the water of life. This time, Shadow's trial was also supervised by them. They wanted to take Shadow to bathe in the spring of life. The spring of life would cleanse him of his past. Chernobog mocked that Shadow could not live more than 3 days. But in fact, Chernobog just wanted Shadow to give up because he knew that the human body could not endure 9 days. But Shadow was determined to guard Odin. The ancient gods were also prepared. They placed Odin's body under the world tree. The 3 Norn goddesses also brought Shadow. This woman recited a mysterious spell on the world tree. Along with the spell, the vines of the world tree began to slowly wrap around Shadow's body. The 3 Norn goddesses told Shadow not to struggle in vain, because it would only cause him more pain. The world tree suspended Shadow in the air. Shadow's guard had officially begun. It was clear that the world tree did not seem friendly to Shadow, but Shadow was now tied to the world tree, so he could not retreat anymore. Time passed very quickly. It was the second day. Shadow told himself that this was just a small matter. By evening, Shadow remembered what Zoria had said to him: when he lost his way, the stars would guide him. On the third day, scorching heat of the sun made him extremely miserable. Of course, it was all a test of the world tree for him. At this time, a man's face suddenly appeared in the clouds. He told Shadow that they had been waiting for Shadow's appearance. On the fourth day, Shadow was clearly exhausted. Shadow saw Laura's silhouette in the starry sky. She told him that he was about to die, but he believed that he could do it. Very quickly, the fifth day came. At this time, Shadow was very hungry. In the desperate situation, Shadow's ability also began to gradually activate. The sky suddenly snowed. He opened his mouth to lick some snow to quench his thirst, but the snow fell more and more heavily. Very quickly, the snow covered Shadow, and he also went to his spiritual world. Here he saw a group of people harvesting cotton. They were the first black slaves brought to America. Queen Sheba was also one of them. Along with the change of the times, the world still could not escape from racism. Only Shadow could lead them out of this difficult situation. This was also the reason why Queen Sheba helped Shadow find a soul friend. Looking at the slaves before his eyes, he was moved. He wanted to help these people. But the giant bull from his childhood dream appeared again. Of course, it was the incarnation of Odin. Along with its appearance, the world tree began to attack Shadow. In the intense pain, Shadow's ability was activated again. This time, he was teleported to another space. This was where Shadow and Odin met for the first time. An Odin clone was also sitting next to Shadow. Odin told Shadow that they were on the border between life and death. At that moment, a pile of teeth suddenly fell from Shadow's head. These teeth were all sacrifices that the war god Tyre had collected. Only then did Shadow realize that after Tyre died, all of these things were taken away by Odin to sacrifice to himself. Odin told Shadow that he had planned it since before Shadow was born. At first, Odin tried to gain Shadow's trust. Then Odin would use Shadow as a sacrifice for him. The sacrifice of his own son would help him return to his most powerful state. It turned out that the guard was just a trick for Shadow to sacrifice himself to Odin. Everything started when Odin gained Shadow's trust. When Shadow learned the truth, he also returned to reality. Faced with the cruelty of his biological father, Shadow finally shed tears. Under the witness of the gods, Shadow was finally swallowed by the world tree. But at that moment, Odin's two ravens, Munin and Hugin, flew to the world tree. Just as everyone was wondering, Odin's body suddenly disappeared. It seemed that Odin's plan had succeeded. However, Shadow is not dead, because Queen Sheba has found Shadow's soul. The movie ends here. Thank you for your attention and watching. Goodbye and see you again.